Not hearing you.
Let's start again, Mordechai.
Yeah, we're going to try to be today how to apply our ovens, our stovetops to the Gemara. We're not going to go into all the different types, but just B'choli is if it's a two-shtel and the basic halacha l'maisa that comes out of it. You know, we learned that the issa of Shia because of a chash that you might come to mechata. That's the more of ches. So really, based on that, there could be l'chayra three svaras why in our stovetops, our ovens, maybe it's a fourth reason by ovens, which we'll get to maybe in a different share, but at least three reasons why maybe the chash chita you don't have by today's ovens and stovetops. The first reason is the way the Metzias was by their ovens, the tanurim, the kiris was that there was coals. What happened was sometimes the coals started becoming oimois, started going down, and you have to mechat to start getting back to fire to make it hotter. And that's what Chazal worried about. But if you make it go for cotton, so then you show that you're not so nervous about it. But by us, the Metzias is the derech klal, you turn on the fire, and it stays. It's a very rare thing. Maybe if there's a wind or something, but normally there's no metzias of b'chol maimis. You put on the fire, whatever setting you put it on, that's what it stays on. So there's a very stark mokum to say that our ovens, maybe there's no chash chitu. Whatever temperature you set on, that's the way it stays. Dugma lezeh, you find there's a bialocha in Simin Beishayin Hey, talks about the gabbing seir shemiyata. It's a chash that you might be mata, the ner, the psila to the shemen, and it's flickering or something. So everyone knows there's a whole sugya in Shabbos about it. In the second parak, there's a bialocha speaks about our lampin. His lamps weren't like ours, but the kapanim was more sophisticated than was Man Chazal. And he brings over there from many achroinim that say that since our lampin, the metzias is that when you light it, it stays, and you don't have to try to take off the black pieces there and other things that could cause the fire to stop flickering. Therefore, there's maybe no chash that you might come to matam. It will be mutter to read or haner, especially by our neighbors, that way. And he brings down Kamastot to Mekel based on that. So maybe there's a starkest word to say that maybe that by our Tanura, maybe there wouldn't be any chash chitut for the same idea, because the chash that Chazal worried about, we don't have. The second reason, something Bemes Ramosh and the Chuvas, it's an Orachaim Chelik Aleph Simon Tzadik Gimel, is Moir, that the chitut that we found as Man Chazal was that you have gecholim in front of you here, and you might be mechata the gecholim to make the fire bigger. But we don't find a Chazal that's a chash, you might bring more eitzim. That means you might bring more gecholim. We don't find that. And he says, if there would be such a chash, so then even by kasher gvava, that einlam gechelas, maybe there's no problem. So he says, and the charam is no gechelas, but let's be worried, someone will throw more kasher gvava into the fire. There it is. Chazal were only worried about what's the fanecha. What's the fanecha? You're going to be mechat. But the choishish that you're going to bring more eitzim, that was not nichlal in the Gzeir of Chazal. Mainly he says, the metzias by it, let's talk about our, let's say, stovetop. What are you doing when you're turning on the fire higher? You're basically bringing more eitzim. You're putting more gas. Everyone knows the way it works. So you're basically putting more gas coming out. And therefore, the fire is bigger. So that's basically a chash of bringing more eitzim. So that's not what Chazal were going on. That's what Moshe's Moir. Shvas Yitzchak brings from a Zalman, from a Yashiv, that they're also Moir this problem. And they say, no, it's not a sushtel to kasher gvava. Because kasher gvava, here, chashi, you might bring eitzim from somewhere else. So since a chashi, you might bring eitzim somewhere else. We say by the time you're going to bring the other eitzim from somewhere else, you can remember, oh, you Shabbos, chas v'shalom, what am I doing? How can I put it in? By the stovetop, just a question of turning it on higher, which is something that takes very quick. Person might forget himself, or maybe they hold that it's nichlal in the Gzeir of Chitut. But Ramosha obviously was also nochus to what they're saying, but after where Ramosha held was, and the Chanami, you're exactly right, that the metzias that we have of bringing eitzim is something that's very easy. It doesn't make a difference. But what was the Gzeir? Everything the way we have to work is what Chazal asked. If we're going to have something today that maybe there would have been a mocker for Chazal to be geyser, okay? And if we have a Matthias today, very sophisticated, you press a button and 8 of them fall down from the ceiling and go fly right inside. It doesn't make a difference. That's not what Chazal will geyser. Chazal will only geyser that when you have a fire lefanecha, you might be mechata that fire. We're not worried about bringing. So those days we weren't worried about it because it's a big techa. So today, let's say it's not such a big techa. We're not going to be geyser if you're going to have fire. We're sitting in the room. Chazal will never geyser such a case. Moshe Kanira held that's why by our stovetops, ovens, it's a question. You might turn the fire on higher. Turning on the fire high means you're putting more gears in. Putting more gears in, it's a shaila of bringing more eights. That was never the chol there. That was a Moshe Zara. The third svara that maybe Kedan is a bialocha in Reishon Gimel Sef Aleph that declares that maybe the whole chash chitui is only when the gecholim stop being oimos. That means the fire, you don't see the fire anymore. So then it's a chash, a person might be mechata. But when the fire is l'fanecha, just maybe a person's going to want to make the fire bigger, that the bialocha says he's mistapik if there's a chash chitui. Why would he be mechata if the fire is here? So even though, so you can say the same thing by the oven and the stovetop, even though you say no, maybe here you want to make the fire bigger. It's the same idea. That what the bialocha is saying is that Lamaisa could be we never find the Chazal will geyser such a thing. So I'm saying there's 3 separate svaras why maybe by our ovens there wouldn't be a chash chitut. The first svara is that by us, the Matthias is there's no reason for a person mechata. That means to play with the knob. Whenever you turn it on, that's the way it stays. So mechatesa, that's nichol l'gzei of Chazal. The second svara is a Moshe svara that if you're going to turn on higher, basically what you're doing is you're bringing in more gears. It's like you're bringing more eitzim. Chazal will never choishe for that shash. The raya is that by kasher gvova, there's no problem. I might bring more kasher gvova. There it is. Chazal will not choishe for that shash. So it could be the reason why they weren't choishe because in those days it was a big tircha to bring it, but it doesn't make a difference. A Moshe held that Chazal, we don't find Chazal will geyser. And the third svara is that maybe the shas when there's a fire there, there's no chash chitut. These are 3 svaras. Even though Moshe is Ma'ir's problem, Moshe is not Mekel. He's just saying a svara why maybe today would be different. But no one's going to tell you that you can make up today's ovens and leave something on the fire without any gorf or cotton. We'll speak about it Hashem, a blech, but without doing anything. No one's going to say you could be makel based on these svaras, but these svaras are important to remember because when you have something that is miked in mutter, which is a malkum lachmir, or there are other svaras and studying to be makel, then about it you can be mitzaref these svaras and say, since really there's common svaras that there's no chash chitut today, so maybe it would be malkum to make. Oh, that's the point number 1. The second shaila is we know from the Sugis HaGemara that we have 2 things. We have kasher gvava and geves beitzim. By kasher gvava, there's no problem at all. Hashem came by geves beitzim. That's where the sugya starts that there's a chiluk. It's kamachim in the soy, or like rabbanon if it's fully cooked. And it'll be mutter, but less than that, will be a problem. The question is, how do we look at our ovens, our stovetops? Do we look at it like geves beitzim? We look at it kasher gvava. So what's the Messiah is a kasher gvava? What's the Nakuda? The Ran says, Shitla Ran says, so Elam Gechelas. Mr. Bura says the same idea. It's in Sifkot and Yotes. I mean, the Messiah of this thing is no wakati mechata because as soon as the Shalheves goes out, the Gechelas also, there's nothing to be mechata. So by our Tanurim, the Zicha is a Messiah something mechata. It means you can make the fire higher. So we spoke about before, maybe making the fire higher is a luxera. But if you're going to hold that it's nichel on luxera, so then there is a mitzias of a chash chitut. The nekuda kashav is there's no mitzias of a chash chitut. But our ovens, our stovetops, that there is a mitzias of a chash chitut, making it higher. So me'lavada, there would be a din of it would have the halach of gefes veitzim that would have to have gorfakotim in order to be matter. The Chazon Ish is toch. In Simon Lamed Zayin Sifkot Nidalo, he says Shia Hanog Bartenu, the Shia that was Nog Bartenu by us, Shepzilza Ish Lamata Taxa Patput, that you have the fire under the pot, It's on top of the side of the pot, but is the burner. That has a loch of kirshen grufo. We're not going to consider that like pash gvava. That's going to be considered like gefes veit. So that's the next important kuda. That our tanurim is considered gefes veitzim, which technically on paper have a problem of a chash chitu. The next thing we have to be aware is we know in the Sugis of Gemara is a kira and is a tan. Kira is the first Mishnah that's before that Achi Yigroif, that Gar for Kotam helps by Kira. By Tanner, it's a Mishnah that Flamet Ches that doesn't help Gar for Kotam by a Tanner. So Melo, even if we hold a Chananya, let's see, we make like Chananya, but if you have a Tafshel that's not even Kokum Eichem in the soil, it comes out that our Kiras have a din of a Tanner, there's no way to make a blech anything because it's a Tanner. Tanner, the halacha is that it does not help to be Gar for Kotam. So the question is, Eich Lodin Idina. How do we look at our ovens? How do we look at our stovetops? Is that considered like a kira? That's considered like a tan. So we know the Gemara says a tanner is shvisas k'derachas, kira is shvisas shteikeders. Kupach is roch lamata kos lamaylo. And a tanner is the biggest heat because it's a shvisas k'derachas and there's a tremendous amount of heat over there. So the Metzias Baus is a little bit different. So where do we put our Tanur Mekiris? Okay, it is what we have considered a Tanur, or we have considered a Kira. So Remes in Shulchan Aruch, the Sif Aleph says like this: Tanur Mishalanu Dinu Kira. What's our Tanur? What's special when it's Tanur Shalanu means the Tanur of the Shulchan Aruch? The Rishonim say that our Tanur. What's our Tanur? Never did a Kira. So Rishonim say different reasons. The Ram brings down. Because what was also was only a Tanur Shenachtumin. Tanur Shenachtumin was like a baker's oven. I guess what we call like the oven, like in the, I don't know if it has to be so hot, like it's by the matzah baking or like a pizza shop, but extremely hot ovens. There's another mahalach that the Beis Yosef brings down because our Tanurim, the peh is manatzad. That means the door, the way you open it up is manatzad. In those days, it was on the top. Since it was on the top, and the pot's on top of it, so the heat gets much more retained inside. But by us, since it's on the side, and you open the door, the Metzias is that the heat doesn't stay in as much. That's the second reason. The third reason, Beis Yosef brings in the Kolboy, because it's Rochim of Fim Yoisim is Tfisik Derachas. Our ovens are much bigger than Tfisik Derachas. The Magen brings two of the reasons. The Mishnah Berurah brings down these reasons. So Mela will come out that our tanurim, our ovens, have all these three reasons. It's open from the side. It's bigger than shvisas k'derachas. It's not a tanur of a baker. So it comes out the chayra that our kiris, even if it's very hot, has a din of a kira and not a tanur. Therefore, the chayra it should help garvakat. So you have zayin the chayra. The chayra you could be meir is that our kiris should have the chaymer of a tan. What's the nakud of a tan? The nakud of a tan is because it's very, very hot. Medicine is very hot, therefore, even if it's to be god for cotton, it's still not going to help. No, what would you say? Is our tanurim hotter? Does it tuoif more than the tanur of Amal or not? Chayra, you could bring a simple raya that it's much hotter. What's the raya? Because in those days, the seed is a heter k'derech haisa. The Rishonim say, most Rishonim hold at least, that even by a talent there's a heter k'derech haisa. Why is it a heter k'derech haisa? Because if you put something raw before Shabbos, it's not going to be ready till the next morning. So maybe by crackpot you have that. But when you put something in an oven, kamat is no metzias, unless you're going to put it on very low heat. Kamat is no metzias of an oven that is not going to be ready for the Suda 2 hours later. So you see, the metzias is that our ovens, however it's made, maybe it's insulated better, whatever the metzias is, it gets extremely hot. So Choy is a very stark amokum to say that our ovens maybe has the chaymer of a tan. So maybe even though takar, maybe it has the characteristics of these tanurim shalom which in Shulchan Aruch, because it's pim and it's tzad, or it's not a tanur shanachtoim, or it's bigger than tvisas k'terachas. But these are all svaris that it's a reason why it's not as hot as a tanur that was with Man Chazal. But the metzias is that our tanur are hotter than the Tanur Shubazman Chazal. So even if it's taki right, Pim and Etzat, it's taka more than Swiss Pirachas, it's taka Nashal Nachtumum. But since it's very, very hot, maybe there's still going to have the Chaymer of a time. That's the Shaila. But the Teres is very poshut. Everything we have is what Chazal tell the Vek. Amaisa, Bisman Chazal, the Metzias was the Tanur, and the chil between a Tanur and a Kira was the Tanur was built in a certain way, and therefore it was built very, very hot. A Kira is built differently, and it's not so hot. Now the Rishonim come along, and they speak about in their times, but their Tanurs were built differently. So Rishonim say that their Tanur is a different Metzias what was Bisman Chazal. So since a different Metzias what was Bisman Chazal, so Melo, that's not Nichol on the Gzeira. So if we have the Metzias Rishonim we're talking about, and they're saying that these Tanurim are different than what was Bisman Chazal, different what Chazal goes on. So even though you can tell me that the Metzias is that if a Chazal would have been around today, maybe it would have been going to have a Tanurim also, because they take a very, very hot, even though it's not doing with the Tanur of what's Chazal, but they're shining and telling us that these Nekudas don't have a Shem Tanur. They have a Shem Kir, because Bisman Chazal, these type of Tanurim were not so hot, and they have the din of Kira. So even if today we made some type of Kira that gets very hot, it's not going to change our lochel. It's not something that Chazal will go on. That's the assault. Everything we have to work with what Chazal did and what they were going on. Remember, I found this assault in Chazanish. Chazanish is similar Lamed Zayin. Sifkot and Zayin says like this: Nero, the tzur is hatano kivaz dino. The tzur of hatano is kived din. If you have a balabayas that has a tachlus of an achtel, that means he built in his house. He wants to make himself a tan like an achtel. About as a tan shanachtel. And if he says when the tanurim were nishtanu in this manner of Rishonim, so they weren't sure, is this considered a tan or a kira? So Rishonim say different svaras why this is considered different. So he says it doesn't make a difference. If it's hotter, not hotter. Everything we have to work with, if this is what Chazal asked, Kokama, this is not what Chazal asked, Melo, it's not a problem. So Melo, even if someone's going to tell you, now Tanur, Taka gets, what's hotter, Alpha Pikain, Aloha is that it still doesn't have the din of a Tanur of Chazal, it has the din of a Kira. So Melo, since it has the din of a Kira, Avada, it would help go for couple. It's kind of interesting, which is going to come up later on, La Aloha, at the end of the Siman, it's very interesting. It's a word that the kiris that they had those days, even the kiris, it retained its heat for a very long time. Even sometimes the next morning it was still hot. By us, it cools down very quickly. Could be it's built in a different way, and we'll see we can happen after Yemina Lalocha. Like a problem with the for us over here is that since the Maisa, this does not have the tzura of the Tana that was Bisman Chazal, like the Rishonim say, or since it's Manatzad, or it's more than Shvis Achas. Melo was not even nichlal in the Gzeir of Chazal. Melo Daloch is that there's no problem. There's no problem. It has din of kir. Bemis, there's really another whole svara that there's another whole svara that you could say. There's another whole svara that you could say over here, which Bemis, Ramosha says this svara. Ramosha says a Mordechai Chiddush. Moshe says that really a tanner. What's the pshat by a tanner that doesn't have gar for cotton? If the Yisara gar for cotton we spoke about is that a person by making gar for cotton is megalodas that is not so nervous about the heat, and therefore since he's megalodas that he's not so nervous about the heat, so we're not worried he's mechat. That's the Yisara gar for cotton. So Moshe says, so why by a tanner shouldn't it help gar for cotton? So Moshe says a murder gazach. Moshe says that when a person makes gar for cotton by a tanner, it's not a raya that he's doing because he doesn't care so much for the heat. Maybe it's for cat. It's so hot. Since the tanner is so hot, the fact that he made a gar for cotton just means that his face is going to burn. Mainly he's cooling it down. So mainly there's no gil das that you have a gar for cotton. But it's not a gar that it's by a tanner or doesn't have gar for cotton. It's just that the gil das that we have when you make a gar for cotton, that you don't have by a tanner. Let's say that someone's going to do something that with that he's going to make all das that he doesn't care about the heat even by a tanner. He says that it's poshut that about even by a tanner gar for cotton can help. Moshe says what do we do by our tanur, our, let's say, stove tops? What do? We put a blech. Even if Lomazogim, we're going to say that gets very hot as a din of an oven, of a tanur, but he says that's zikr not the way people cook. No one cooks with a blech on top. And zikr mamayit t'choyim harba, more than just making it that it shouldn't burn. So since a person is Megal Das, and Gil Das etzim helps by tanur, Mela Moshe says that even if our tanurim have a din of a tanur, Aval Pikein, Gorfa Kotan is going to help. So Moshe might get chiddush. That even if you say not like I'm saying, even if you say that since our tanurim get very hot, they have a din of a tanur, not of a kir. But Aval Pikein, there's no din that the etzim Gorfa Kotan doesn't help by tanur. That the Gorfa Kotan doesn't help by tanur is because there's no mitzias of a gilu das, because maybe the reason why the person is doing it because he doesn't want to be so hot. But if you can have a timtza, then when a person is going to do a gilu das by a tanner, it would work. Mela blech is such a timtza. Why? Because by blech the mitzias is that it's not the derech to cook this way at all. No one cooks this way. He's doing something that's totally abnormal. It's not a way of cooking. So he obviously is not so worried about the heat. Sounds like a very big chiddush where Moshe says that by a tanner would help go for cotton. Vices and for sure prima godim in Eish Avram Sif Cotton Ches that says lahedyo that the reason why by tanner it doesn't help is because there's no gildas. He has a kasha. He says there's a lot of cotton over hover. Cotton over hover means that let's say you made a ketima and then there was a fire. The fire got bigger and basically now the ketima they did is come out the less. Ava Pika it helps. What do you mean? But see, right now you have the fire. So the Prima God, the teretz is because you made a gila das. So the Prima God, 1 second. If we're not, it's not telling the mitzias how hot it is, but it's telling you gila das, and that's going to stop you. So there, some came. Why by Tana doesn't have gorva cotton? Over there, you also have a gila das. He made a gorva cotton. Dr. Prima God, no. A tanner, if someone does a gorva cotton, it's not a gila das. You know why? Because maybe he's doing it because it's too hot. He doesn't want the food to burn. So maybe it's not a gila das. It's just for people got like a Moshe that there's no fundamental din that by a tanner gorva cotton doesn't help. The aside why gorva cotton doesn't help by tanner is because it's not a gila das. But if you have a chetimtza, God doesn't have a chetimtza. That's not a discussion. But if God doesn't avoid it, it's only because there's no gila das. Because Dr. Moshe that if you would have a chetimtza of a tanner that there is a gila das, for example, that if you put a blech on top of it, which that would have a din of ketuma, which we'll speak about in Mitzvah if that's true, but that's where Moshe is going, that has a din of ketuma. Maybe Moshe says that about his poshit, that would be moil even by a tanner. So maybe it comes out that when you get the question we wanted to know is our tanurim have a din of a kiro or a tanner? So we said the pashtus is that even though maybe it gets very hot, still since it has the characteristics of a molga kiris, because it's manatzad and it's tirachas, and it's not a tanner shenach tumim, Melo has a din of a kiro. But Moshe says, and we have a makor from the Prima Godim to this, that even if you can tell me it has a din of a tanner, but by making a blech, that's a good gila das, there's no din that be'etzem by a tanner doesn't help. So what we have here till now is that our tanurim, our kiris, even though there's many as far as there's no shashchito, so we are choishish, and about you have to make a gorfa kotum. The second thing is that we established that our kiris and tanurim have a din of gefes v'eitzim. It's like you're massive with gefes v'eitzim, you're not be massive with kashik vova. Mainly, you also have to make a gorfa kotum. And weiter, our kiris, either they have a din of a kira that helps gorfa kotum, not a tanner. Even if you can tell me they don't have a din of a kira, they have a din of a tanner, it's going to help put a blech because it's a gil das. That's a good gil das, and there's no din that ve'etzim gil das can help out. Now I want to get into who do we paskin like. So we paskin like we spoke about the machlekes Chananya and Rabbanon. We have a tafshel that was a special k'maychem in the soy. According to Chananya, the halacha is that it's mutter kol kama das k'maychem in the soy. We spoke about tum halchem either because it's nechla de chak or because it's going to be ready for the time of the suda. That's Chananya shita. There's no chash shita. That Rabbanon hold no, that it has to be fully cooked. and maybe Mistamet Braloi. We said it's on a Chag Rishonim, but the Chol HaPochis has to be Nispashal Kol Tzorke Mistamet Braloi. But if it's not fully cooked, even if it's fully cooked, but it's Mistamet V'yofle L'Drabonon, there's still going to be a Chash Shchita. So the question is, who we pass on? A good chilik of tafshilin that we have, even if it's fully cooked, you have a cholent. Cholent the Metzias is Mistamet V'yofle. Meat, you're baking, cooking meat, Metzias is, the longer you cook it, the longer you bake it, it gets better with Derech Klal. So that's Mistamet V'yofle. So if you go later up on it comes out with these things, you have to make a blech. There's no way to. Shows will be passed by. So the Mechaber in Reish Nun Gimel Sif Aleph brings down two shitas. The Mechaber Soisim, like the shita of the Rabbanon Chananya, that it has to be dafka if it's fully cooked and it's not like Brialo. But if it's not fully cooked, or if it's fully cooked and it's not Briofloi, you have to make Gorv Bekotim. Then the Mechaber brings down the Yesh Oimrim, that like the shita of Chananya, that if as long as Kamaychim in the soy, it's good enough. So the klal is always, when the Beis Yosef has a stam v'yesh, the klal is that we always go with the stam. The stam over here is like the Rabbanon Chananya. It seems to be that the Beis Yosef, the Mechaber Paskins, like the shita of the Rabbanon of Chananya. That's what and the Bialocha read the that's will be the shita of the Mechaber. Just to get off a little bit on the side, there is a big kasha from a Mechaber in Siman Reish and Daled Sif Beis that talks about sleep, as over there, that even if it's Kamaychim in the soy, it's going to be good. So that they say by sleep, there it's better. Hashem, you see over there when you learn it. There is another kasha from Mechaber Sif Daled. There's a Mechaber Sif Daled that talks about fresh fruits. And it's a word Mechaber that you do not have to have a blach. And it's a word of Beis Yosef. The reason is because it's like Chananya, that whole of his Kamaychim in the soy is Nechadet Chak, there's no problem. So within fresh fruit, even though you want to bake an apple, it's going to come better if it cooks, if it bakes. But since it's ready to eat now, it's a kosher gain that it's good. But if you go like Rabbanon, it's still going to be a problem because it's still the special called Tzorkoi, but it's not. But it's in stomach v'yofloi. So the Beis Yosef says that halacha is told Mechayikis Chayim Rabbanon. The problem is that the Mechaber brings it down in Reish Nun Dalet Tziv Dalet. So there's a big kasha how to learn. So Magen Avraham has his way how to fan for this kasha. So I'm not going to go into the Magen Avrahm's mahalach, but there is a Minchas Koyin, maybe the Goyin learns that way, that says the Mechaber paskins over there by Chananya, which is taka very interesting. So it would seem the problem is the Mechaber over here in Reish Nun Gimel seems to paskin like Rabbanon Chananya. So the answer is that you find the Mechaber other places that even though he has a stam b'yesh, but sometimes he has a stam later on that's megala, that even though the normal klal stam b'yesh we go with the stam, but sometimes there's a yitzim in a klal. Just emotion is coming to my mind now as I'm talking. You look in your day, a siman kuf pei dalet siv tes. The Mechaber brings a stam b'yesh, and the Ramah says, look in the Mechaber in kuf pei tes siv beis. You look over there, the Mechaber over there is soisim like the yesh, and he says that's the ikar. So you find it sometimes, but the Minchas Koyin says that from there that you see that the ikar din of the Mechaber is like Chananya. And from what I heard from some Svardim, is that the minig by the Svardim is to be make like Chananya, and most of them, I don't think they know where the minig is coming from. But that's me. I think I once saw in the Kaf HaChaim that bases it on the Minchas Koyin on this mahalach. That's a side point. Again, Mechaber Shita. But the passion of Mechaber Shita is the Mechaber Paskins like the Rabbanon Chananya. The question is the Ramah. The Mechaber brings us down b'yesh. But the Ramah says on the second Shita, v'no is for Achroina. So it seems very clear that the Ramah Paskins like the Shita of Chananya, that once it's Kamaychim and Soy, it's fine. As I said, more in the Pri Megadim, many places in the Shulchan HaRav, that they hold that that's the Shita of the Ramah, that once it's Kamaychim and Soy, there's no problem. And so it's partial. Anytime you have a tafsha that's Kamaychim and Soy, there's no problem to leave it on the blech or in the oven, even without a blech. The problem is like this. There's a Rosh in Kira, after it brings all the Shitas, who do we pass like Chananya the bottom? The Rosh is like a Lashon like this. Ubishvil sherabu deyes by Pispa. V'yisrael adukim and mitzvahs oinik Shabbos. So the Rosh says, since a lot of shittas and the Shaul Adukim mitzvah, I think Shabbos, see, it wasn't like so easy those days like today, you just put on a blech. It was a little bit more complicated. So it was very hard if you had a tafshil that wasn't fully cooked, especially as Mistam Virali, you have a shtickle problem. The only answer would be to take it off the fire, and then lav dafka it's going to be so hot. So Mela, there's a shtickle of sometimes chesorna enik Shabbos. He says people are not going to listen. Mela hadaklan kiminik shenogu apir pais. So what does the Rosh mean hadaklan? So the Bialocha understood he means to say it's like a gather of hadaklan. We just show like a together mutar shishayim ayim mezidim, and you don't have to be moicha. But the Rosh really holds the right things like that. That's the way the Bialocha understood Pshat in the Rosh. And based on that, he says that even though Lamaisa, the Ramah says no galakol, but the no galakol you have to take it with a grain of salt. It's based on this Rosh. And Mela, Avada in Limchois, Yadamakilim, but there's a very stark mokum to be back. That's what the Bialocha says, which really is very hard to understand the Bialocha, even if Lamazogin, the Rosh says that way. Okay. The Rosh says that way. But there's many other Rishayim. And the BHILCHOS means many other Rishayim that say very clearly, Pascal and Chananya. The Rosh. That's the Rosh's takes. Why is the Bialocha chapping on the Rosh? And because of that, telling you that's what the Ramah means, it's a trick of a chiddush. That's what the Bialocha says. Chaznish says, brings this Bialocha, and it says it's not true. That's not the pshat in the shita of the Rosh. That's not what the Rosh means. It means when the Rosh says that mutav, Rosh is that because of other mitzvah in Shabbos lahishma lahach mahanach lam kiminig, doesn't mean that's like together mutar shishaykin and just let them do the minig. It's not the pshat. The Chaznish in similar Zayin Sivkon Gimel says what the Rosh means is in kavanah a Rosh kamoy sheheven abishtapurim with mutar shishaykin. Afos is machayik shaykin, and really there would have been a very stark mokum to be machmir on the shayla. But since the Maisa, it's a big shayla, b'tolaynik Shabbos, and the Maisa, it's very hard for them to accept such a chumrah. So Mela is gevorn shayim the minig the paskin like there's a shayim. The Rosh doesn't mean that haint is again a mutar shaykin. The Rosh means because of this svara dukim it's like Shabbos. That was a svara why it was angefit in Klai Yisrael to be noyig like the shita. But about the haint the Maisa, since that was angefit by the Friedik the Rishayim, the Friedik the Paiskim to be assignment on the shita of Chananya, Mela haint that's a varat aloch. It's not a gather of mutar shaykin. Mela the Chazon holds about it. Ikalach is a Pascal Chananya. So we have over here is very wichtig gezach. Even though Ramah says the minig is to be assignment on Chananya, but the Bialocha says no, not so partial. Mela the Bialocha seems to be, if someone's going to ask the Bala Mishnah Berurah, it's in the Mishnah Berurah is telling you that about it, the right thing is, if you don't want to be a gather of Eilim Chos, the right thing is that as long as the tafshil is not fully cooked, and Mistam Virali, which you have the Rabbanon, you should be machber and put a blech. And this is very negir because we'll see Met Hashem, an oven you really can't make a blech. So the oven you basically really be saying Chananya. So according to Bialocha, if someone puts something in the oven that's mistamek for Yofaloi, even if it's fully cooked and stam for Yofaloi, you're really just together of a limchus bad and a kilo, which I don't think most people don't want to be that way. It's a struggle of aura. So I just want to point out one very interesting. I just want. Right. The minig is talking. The minig has to be local because by oven really there's no way to make it. It's true. What you're saying about Gaddisman is true. Moshe speaks about this 100% true. If someone would make a Pesach type insert, it would be good. But Poit Chazi, Mayam of the bar, no one does that. Right, exactly. So it's true. You could do that. Moshe speaks about that answer, but Lamaisa, that's not done. It happens to be by an oven. There's another for this Shabich Shashchita because the Metzias by oven is. I was planning on talking about that, but once it came up by oven. What's the Metzias when you let's say it's set for 200 degrees, yeah, and now you make it higher to 400 degrees. The Metzias is the fire doesn't get any higher. It's just a thermostat that just makes it that the oven stays on, the fire stays on longer. So that's also another sport. It's not doing with the Shashchita of Chazal. But the Bialocha is Ma'ir, and I don't think anyone here wants to be a gather of, according to Mishnah Berurah, even though we have a Chazanish. Mishnah Berurah says, "Ein limchos," we like to call ourselves Mishnah Berurah. So I don't want to be Meisiv Monakud. First of all, it's very interesting that you look at the Mishnah Berurah inside, it does not, doesn't tell you this point. And more important, the Mishnah Berurah, at the end of the simulation test, when he gives you a kitzur, all the halachas, he tells you that we're makel once Kamaich Minasoi. He doesn't tell you that you should know that's only if you don't want to be a get of Hilchos, but really you should be machmir. He doesn't tell you that. And the Moshe, in all the place that discusses it, seems to them on that the halachas once Kamaich Minasoi, about it's good. In Orchos Rabbeinu, Mechaznish, seems to be that it all held out like this. Huh? Right. So I want to. It could be. I'm not saying that's a chat. Could be. You could answer with you saw that I heard many times that there's the Mishnah Berurah and there's a Bialoch. There's two different things. The Mishnah Berurah together with the Shatzian is with the Mishnah Berurah, Roy Bikiyusai, Bamkusai, Sugya, and he goes through the Sugya, Oracle Rochboy, as you see, and his paskins based on what comes out from the paskin, as I have signed Allah. And the Bialoch is his personal opinion. The Mishnah Berurah is telling you based on the paskin and the dark raw, this is what comes out. The Bialoch, well, he's Moira, his personal opinion. He says, Lamaisa, it's true. All the paskin, like Hananya and everything, but I don't understand because Ani is daiti, I have a rush, and for the rush sounds like it's a gather of mutiv. So if someone would ask the Mishnah Berurah personally, what's your personal opinion about this? He might say, I think that there's a very shtakamokkan to be machmir. But what is he going to tell you lemaisa? It could be probably to tell you, listen, I can tell you all the places I'm a fool lemaisa we pass by Hanan. So that could be teretz. I don't know. That's just one theory. But I want to be maisa very chashuv in the good. We started off and we said there's really three reasons that by our curious, there shouldn't be a chash chitu. One, because why would a person be mechata? The fire stays the same. It's not like it's oimos. Two, Moshe's time that when you're turning on higher, it's bringing new wood. It's like kasher gvover, bringing new wood. We never find chazal agrees to that. And the third time is what the BHILCHOS says that maybe when the fire is still there, maybe there's no chash. So we said that we're not going to be makel based on these first. And there's someone that's ma'ur these horrors say you can makel, but we're talking about something with Shulchan Aruch straight to Pastor Chananya. And the Mishnah Berurah is masking Pastor Chananya. He says that Lamaisa, he thinks it's together of Hilchos and the Chaznish and other secular headgear, not like the Mishnah Berurah. And the Mishnah Berurah himself seems to be soisim. So Elamai, you want to avoid it's had to be halacha. So that as I invite you to say, since we have so many swords, why the cloud shouldn't be chashchitus, even though we're not going to make it with those swords, but to be worried about this, that's why I think the minig, that's almost time of chat in the minig oilam, is not worried about this, and the minig oilam is to be makel with chananya. If someone wants to be machmer, another person could be machmer. I'm not saying, but the person has to know what Allah is. Oh, right. So where Megadisman is more, a lot of times people tell me that they want to machmer. I said it's fine to machmer, but again, oven, you don't really have a choice. Now, someone's going to say. Sometimes people ask me, "Am I a hypocrite by putting a blech on top, making a blech on top on something that's fully cooked, but in the oven I'm leaving something that's fully cooked and I'm not having a blech, so I'm making a steer." So he's not a hypocrite because on top he could make a blech and the bottom he can't. So what should he do? But that's more than that because I said that there is a svara to say that in the oven there's another reason why there's no shashchitu, because the metzias is you're never making the fire bigger. You're just making the thermostat, leaving it higher. So the shtagas that's not doing with what was on chazal. Not that I'm coming to be mental based on that, but I'm saying another svara why oven is better. So there is a more contact for a person to be more makel by oven over a stove top, and especially stove top there's no eitzah. So I think the minig oilam is it could be there are yichidim that are machmanis that I can't say, but the minig oilam is that people do our mashra things in the oven. Even if they're obviously has to be fully cooked. If it's not fully cooked, then you always have a problem once you're opening, and you can have a problem closing it. But even if it's fully cooked, but it's mestam v'yafaloi, which according to Rabbanon, will be a problem. We all make all like Hanani. Oh. I want to talk about one more point here. We pass like Hanani. At Bemes, we mentioned, I think it was in the first share, we mentioned that we have a Moed Lamed Zayin. And the Moed Lamed Zayin is machalik between mistamek v'yofaloi and mistamek v'rala. The question is, who's the more going? So we said there's four mahalchim how to learn the Shai. Either it's going like the Shita of the Rabban and Chananya, either like Rabban itself, and Rabban hold that even though you have to have korva cotton, but if it's fully cooked and it's not McGrella, you can make it. That's one mahalch. The second mahalch we said was, some are trying to say, it's not exactly the Rabban and Chananya, they take hold, there's no Eitzah, but there's a Shita that goes, it's another Shita of Tanoim that go with the Rabbanim, but they're a little more made. That was one kav in Rishonim. The other kav in Rishonim is, and that's the Mechaber. The Mechaber is Moshe Paskins, like the Rabban Chananya. Still, the Mechaber says that if it's a stamach virala, you can make it. The Mechaber is going like the sheet of the Gemara there. Question is, what about if you go like Chananya? So there was two malachim in Rishonim to learn that how to shot the Gemara there. Either it's going like Chananya, but even the Chananya was only makel when it's mistamik v'yofli, not mistam virala. What does that mean? And if you have a tafshel, Zok the Balamor, that's Kamaichem and the soy. And when it's going to be fully cooked, it's Mistamach V'yofaloi, then Zok Shashchita. Why? Because the person looks at, listen, it's not ready now, and I have nothing to lose by being Mechat. Obviously, the person not thinking, but this is what's going through his mind. There's no reason not to Mechat, because even if it's going to start cooking very, very quick, at the end of the day, it's only Mistamach V'yofaloi. Hashenke, a tafshel that's Mistamach V'raloi, he's very nervous to touch it, because if it's right now, he could eat at the Eitzchak. And if he's going to stop him mechated, you never know, he might ruin it because it's down for Ellen. That's one malach going to show you. This is the malach for the Balamor. The Rashi brings b'shem of Haigoy that the sugya is going like Chananya and it's fully cooked. But when it's down for Yofel is a struggle of problem. You know why? Because since it's fully cooked and it's down for Yofel, even a drop of chita helps. There's a much more of a chash, the person mechat to something, that even a drop of chita helps. So now that we pass the Chananya, Yeshlot, I'll be choish the shita of Haigoy, that if it's fully cooked and it's stomach v'yofloid, it's a problem. Or we choish of Balamor, if it's stomach v'yofloid and it's kamaichem in the soy, it's a problem. Or maybe we're not choish for any of them. I'm happy to say I cannot be choish for any of them. It's bullshit. Because if you learn the sugi is going like Rabban Chananya, we pass it like Chananya, then it's not shred. So there's some Rishonim that say one of the reasons why Allah would make it like Chananya is based on that sugi is going like Chananya. The other Rishonim say we have other rights. So that's the shaila. Are we choish for these shitas? Period. Or we hold a Chananya's mutter across the board, or we're not choish for the shitas. And if you're choish for the shitas, or we're choish for the Balamor shita, we're choish for the Haigoin shita, which shita we're choish for. Oh. So we have here a very interesting lashon in the Mechaber. Mechaber Rishon Gimel says like this. Mechaber, when he brings down the shita, the Yeshaim, which is the shita of Chananya, says like this: Yeshaim shakosun is bashuk kamaichem in the soy. Oy, shen is bashuk kol tzorkim stamach v'yafloy mutter. 1 second. He says it's bashuk kamaichem in the soy. When it comes to bashuk kol tzorkim, then it's the stamach v'yafloy. Tzorkim v'kvegel. It's mashma that when it's bashuk kamaichem in the soy, it's not mutter the stamach v'yafloy. So he says it seems to be that the Mechaber Paschals like the Balamor. That that's good. If it's bashuk kol tzorkim, it's mutter the stamach v'yafloy. But it's bashuk kamaichem in the soy, then it's not mutter. But then the Krieger says that the Mechaber Fiyazoi is that you have to have Gorfa Cotton. Elok, Shehischel is Bashal, the lawyer Gila Machin the soy, then you need Gorfa Cotton. But Mashal, once it comes to Machin the soy, even if it's Mistamach B'Yofloi, then you don't need. So the Krieger is a struggle of a stira in the Mechaber. The emphasis is this same stira that the Krieger is in the Mechaber, in the tour, you have the same deer, and you look in the Visha, it's the same stira. Mr. Primigodim is married as stira. And the Paragoyla, I don't want to go through all the Marmakaimis, but there's a lot of places in which are on the stira if the Mechaber Paschals like the sheet of the Balamor or not. So the Maisa, a lot of Achaidim say Maisa that the Maisa we could be Mekel, and there's the Taz and others in the war cloth that this second sheet of Paschals like the Rishonim that hold. Not like that. Not like the Balamor, and you have to say that Mechaber is Lav Dafka. And it seems to be the Mishnah Berurah also that went that way, because the Mishnah Berurah brings down in the Bialocha, in the Maschal Ella, he brings the other part of the Kvega that speaks about what happens if it's less than Meichem in the soy. There's a question if it helps go for cotton. There's a Shaul, and he brings down that Sophic over the Kvega. But this Chedek of the Kvega, Gabi the Balamor, he doesn't bring down. It seems there's not Choshesh. Oh, but the emphasis is Bemis says, Moilim loyamality, I'll do Rabbi Kivega. I wasn't zeichel to understand Rabbi Kivega. It's not a kunst to answer Rabbi Kivega's question, but I don't understand Rabbi Kivega. Because Kivega says that the Mechaber is mashma, he passes like Chananya. Why? Because the Mechaber says, Shekoshin is Bashal Kamaichem in Esoi, or Bashal Kotzork Misam B'Yofloi. So it could be Kivega, the fact that he said by Bashal Kotzork Misam B'Yofloi is mashma, that says Bashal Kamaichem in Esoi is mutter, not Misam B'Yofloi. If that would be the case, I would have written the Mechaber different. I would have written Yeshay Mishakoshin is Bashal Kamaichem in Esoi, Umitzamek V'Raloi, Oishin is Bashal Kotzork. Why is he making this Tanai Misam B'Yofloi, Davka by Bashal Kotzork? And by this Bashal Kamaichem, so he doesn't say Dafka Mistam V'Raloi. I would have written Faket. Yeshay Mishakoshin Bashal Kamaichem in Esoi, Umitzamek V'Raloi, Oishin is Bashal Kotzork. Stam. And it's mutter b'choloifim. The Mechaber doesn't write that way. So Lula Divrim Kreig, I would have said that what the Mechaber is coming afuk is a whole different sound. Mechaber does not pass like the Balamor. It's coming like not like the Balamor. He says it's Bashal Kamaichem Nesoy is mutter across the board. And not only that, the Mechaber is telling you, I don't even pass like Rav Haigoin either. He's saying Oishin is Bashal Kotzorkum Mistam V'Yofaloi. Lo mi boying Mistam V'Raloi. Even Mistam V'Yofaloi is mutter. I mean, it's not like the Rav Haigoin that says that if it's Mistam V'Yofaloi, like if I go and says Mistam V'Yofaloi, then it's going to create a problem as Bashal Kotzork. And then the motion of the Mechaber is a Moed Meduk. The Mechaber is coming to say that we pass on to Rishonim that hold the like Chananya. It's mutter on Kamaichem and Esoi, no matter what. And the Mechaber is coming to Fugu all the other shittas. Yeshay Mishakos is Bashal Kamaichem and Esoi is mutter, even if it's Mistam V'Yofaloi, which is fully cooked. Fugu Balamor. Then he says, Oishin is Bashal Kotzork, Mistam V'Yofaloi, Afuke, the Shita, of Haigoin of the Rashba. And then it's found for the steer of Krega is that the Mechaber fears always. But the only time you go to come to him, if he didn't come to Maichem in the soy, it's Mashma. If it came to Maichem in the soy, it's mutter across the board. Krega, what do you mean? Mechaber at the beginning is Mashma, he holds like Chananya. Like the Balamor, that if it's Mistam V'Yofaloi, Maichem in the soy, Mistam V'Yofaloi, it's going to be a problem. There it is no. About the whole that even if you have someone's Kamaichem in the soy, and it's going to be fully cooked, it's going to be Mistam V'Yofaloi, Ava Pikein, there is no problem. So Mechaber Faket, Paskins, not like with the Balamor, not like if I going B'choloifin, it would be mutter. That's what I would say. Lule did with Krega. Maybe Krega didn't want to say this. You always have to understand why you couldn't stay in Kraga's Gashel. Shaz, why Krega didn't want to say this. Maybe if Krega held that the Beis Yosef didn't bring down the Rav Haigoin basis, it's not on the page. But you find many places the Beis Yosef and the Mechaber brings down things that he doesn't bring down in the Beis Yosef. I don't know. What's the chat with Krega? But Lule did with Krega, I would say this chat with Mechaber and Baruch Batzosi in Tilo David in Sifkot Yud. He wants to learn that's the chat in the Mechaber that is coming Lafuke Rav Haigoin, and will come out like this. The Mechaber is Mekel in Gansen by once it's Kamaichem in the soil. And this is a very negative Shaila. Because if you're going to hold that if it's Kamaichem in the soil, if it's Mistamach V'Yofaloi is a problem, to come out every single time you have a soup on the fire, if it's Kamaichem in the soil, it's not fully cooked. You have a cholent, you have to have a blech. Or if you hold like a Haigoin, it will come out. Okay, if it's fully cooked, you have a soup, you have to have a blech. Because it's Mistamach V'Yofaloi. You have a cholent, if it's fully cooked before Shabbos, you have to have a blech. All these things. People make overnight kugel, they put them in the oven. So we said in the oven, you can make a lachanani. 1 second. But overnight kugel, the Maisa, is Mistam V'Yofaloi. Even if it's fully cooked. So according to Haigoin, it would be a problem. But if you say the chananya, we go like chananya that's makel across the board. So even if you have a cholent or a chicken soup that's kamaichem in a soy, and it's going to be Mistam V'Yofaloi when it's fully cooked. Or you have something that's fully cooked, and it's continuing to be Mistam V'Yofaloi, after picking up the B'chesher of Haigoin, maybe you could be makel. In these cases, so what comes out is that the Ikra Loch is like Hananya, that one something is special to Maichem in the soil, even if it's going to be fully cooked, it's going to be Mistamach V'Yofaloi, it's going to be good. The Nachosh for the Shita of the Balamor, even if the Krega is Moiris here, Shochanok Maisa Bishtabur does not bring it down, and other places also don't bring it down. And Prim Kodim says Maisa we can make on the Shiloh, and also when Nachosh for the Shita of Haigoin, that it's a special Legamri. We don't have to worry about if it's Mistamach V'Yofaloi. So maybe one something is special to Maichem in the soy. Ikadin, there's no Isashir, say on top of the Kiro, say inside. About it, someone wants to be Machma, like the Bialocha, someone could be machmir like there should be halacha. That's a chumrah. But we said about that you can't say someone that is it's not doing richtig hanoga, that he doesn't have a blech, because like we said, even though the Mishnah Berurah is moyer that way in the halacha, but the Mishnah Berurah himself doesn't seem to hold that you mechuyev to do that, because he holds a halacha. It seems to be not like that. The minig is to mekel, and we said many stories why you could be mekel, and often we said there's another story. So mela about the halacha is that someone has a tafshel that's fully cooked, or even it's not fully cooked, but it's k'maychem in the soy, you're allowed to leave it in the oven, even though you're not going to have a blech. Now, just important to just to mention, because this mechshel happens many times. There's always, I'll speak about this maybe, Mitchell, maybe at a different occasion, that really everything should be cooked before Shabbos, because the metzias is that if it's not fully cooked, sometimes people move stuff, and then you can get into a shiloh of kir bishul, or for example, it happens, I've forgotten the shiloh. People put the chalas in the oven, and they have a soup or have meat, and it's not fully cooked. And what happens is they open it up to take out the chalas. So if someone closes, it's really a problem, because it's some fush halacha, reish nun zayin. If you close an oven and something is not fully cooked, that's a bishul. So if the guy remembers, he won't close it, but he's not going to be able to close the oven. So you're getting yourself into problems. So the right thing is that you should never leave any tafshilim on the kira or in the tanner unless it's fully cooked. But even if it's not a problem. Obviously, if someone's in a shas of chak, obviously, even if it's not fully cooked, it's fine. But the person has to be careful not to close the oven. Means open. Open is not the problem. A closed oven, if it's not going to be fully cooked. Okay. That's all, HaRav.
Okay.